You've got to do both the motion and the second.
Second. All right, I think we're ready to go, Josh. Oh, okay. He's always seems to run late. Last year it was.
Surprise.
Oh, it still says this. I call the 2,442nd meeting of the Milwaukie City Council to order. Councilor Stavanger is joining us by Zoom, so we are all present today. This meeting is being held in person at City Hall and by video conference. The public may participate in this meeting by coming to City Hall or joining the Zoom webinar. The meeting is being broadcast live on the city's YouTube channel on Comcast Cable Channel 30 within city limits. There will be opportunities for the public to speak during this meeting. If you would like to address council, you may come to City Hall or participate via Zoom. If you are interested in speaking, please let staff know by filling out a yellow comment card for those at City Hall or emailing ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov for those on Zoom. When it is time to take public comments, staff will monitor the comment cards, email inbox, and Zoom participant list and chat. We will take comments in the order they are received and seen. Comments may be emailed to ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov. We ask that all Zoom participants who intend to speak label their Zoom username to show their first and last names for the record. Translation services are available in multiple languages. Please see this informational slide for details. And we are in future meetings going to have that in a few more languages as well to put up on the screen. So please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The City of Milwaukie respectfully acknowledges that our community is located on the ancestral homeland of the Clackamas people. In 1855, the surviving members of Clackamas signed the Willamette Valley Treaty, also known as the Kalapuya Etc. Treaty, with the federal government in good faith. We offer our respect and gratitude to the indigenous people of this land. On to our announcements. Nominations for the 2025 Volunteer of the Year continue to be accepted. Nominees can be anyone who resides in Milwaukie or is a member of a nonprofit or business that serves the Milwaukie community. If you know someone who has gone above and beyond in 2025, please nominate them for the award by February 11th. I just wanted to throw in a personal request here. We have had, it's always hard picking the Volunteer of the Year. We always have a lot of really great nominees. And if you have nominated someone in the past that did not get selected, I would not be discouraged by that. You should feel free to nominate that person again. Because like I said, it's always been a hard decision. Join the Friends of Tideman Johnson Park and the Johnson Creek Watershed Council for a morning of stewardship and land tending on Saturday, February 7th from 9 a.m. to noon at Tideman Johnson Park. Register to volunteer on the Johnson Creek Watershed Council website at jcwc.org. Make a Valentine's Day card for a Meals on Wheels recipient and one for yourself at the Letting Library this Saturday, February 8th. I think Saturday is the 7th, actually, so I'm not sure. Sunday, February 8th, from 1 to 3 p.m. All ages are welcome to drop in and make cards. I have a couple other things I'd like to announce too. On Saturday, February 14th, is the second Saturday of the month, which means volunteers will be working in Minthorn Springs. We gather there at 9:30 on the second Saturday of every month, 9:30 to noon. You park near Planet Fitness and walk across 37th Avenue, so come out and join us. And also that weekend, the Valentine's Day weekend, we're going to have a a first time kind of big event on our waterfront. We're going to have a sauna festival. And sort of organized and sponsored by the Sauna Glow, a downtown business. But it looks like it's going to be quite a big event, so I encourage people to look into that. And anybody else have any near term? Yeah.
It's not an event, but I just wanted to pass on congratulations to Lisa Gratnick and Matt Clinic were selected by the Planning Commission to be the new chair and vice chair of the Planning Commission. And so they try to roll through new chairs every year and that kind of thing. And gosh, Max, I'm not even sure he's been there a year, but he's already the vice chair. So he's moving on up. And the Planning Commission is amongst the board and committees is one of the heavier lifts. And so we really appreciate all the good work that they do.
They do carry a load, so congratulations to them. It's good news. And for people who don't know, the Milwaukie Museum is back open again on Saturdays now. They were closed for renovations since last summer, but they reopened a couple weeks ago. And so if you haven't been to the Milwaukie Museum, it's free. It's open, I think, 9 to 1 or something like that on Saturday. Don't swing by and check the hours on the door. But
Mayor Beatty. I also put the plug in that our annual board and community recruitment is open as of this last weekend. And so if you're interested in serving any of our boards and committees, you can apply for any of them. And there's a new earlier deadline, March 15th. Applications due March 15th this year.
Yeah, we're trying to get interviews done earlier because we're in the budget cycle. So that all kind of runs together. So it's a good idea to move the deadline earlier. Okay, so I think that's it for the announcements. For more information about each of these events and others, please visit the city's homepage at milwaukieoregon.gov or call 503-786-7555. So this is the haiku that was probably submitted in sunnier time of the year, but it ended up being a February haiku in our rotation. A walk in the sun to consume span masubi. There's nothing better. Yes, people who want to submit haiku, we've got a few to get us through another month or so, but you can always send haiku to me at you can look up my email address on the city's website and send them to my attention. We're always collecting haiku for our meetings. All right. With that, I invite Mr. Talku to the front to present the proclamation for the Vietnamese community of Oregon for the Vietnamese Lunar New Year.
Good evening, Mayor Pate and the city council members. My name is Thao Từ, the president of the Vietnamese community of Oregon. This evening, I'm very happy to be here to say thank you so much for the proclamation in recognition of the Vietnamese American Lunar New Year celebration that will be held at Lac-Marc High School on February 21st, 2026 at 11 a.m. We welcome all of you to join with us in this occasion. Again, thank you so much for recognition of our Lunar New Year this year.
There's some nice photos there that the recorder just put up from years past. And it's a lovely event. I've been to it before, and I encourage people to attend at Clackamas High School on February 21st. And there's lots of kid-friendly things. Yeah, those little ones of yours would love running around here. Whereas the Vietnamese community of Oregon is an organization whose mission is to unite, support, foster pride in all members of the Vietnamese community in the city of Milwaukee and throughout Oregon. They act to ensure all Vietnamese Americans understand that they have a voice and a place in society. And whereas the Vietnamese community of Oregon achieves this by passing down Vietnamese culture and traditions from generation to the next generation, while striving to strengthen relationships with other ethnic communities throughout Oregon and Southern Washington. And whereas the most important of these traditions is that of the Lunar New Year celebration, a celebration of joy, history, and culture for all Vietnamese wherever they are in the world. And whereas this important tradition has been celebrated and organized by the Vietnamese community of Oregon in the city of Milwaukie and neighboring cities across Oregon for the last 50 years. And whereas we continue that tradition today by showing our support to the Vietnamese American communities, not only in Oregon, but across America, to be an example of unity for future generations. Now, therefore, I, Lisa Beatty, Mayor of the City of Milwaukie, a municipal corporation in the county of Plaquemines, in the state of Oregon, do hereby proclaim February 21st, 2026 to be Vietnamese Lunar New Year's Celebration Day in Milwaukie and encourage all residents to observe this day.
Thank you for reading the proclamation. Actually, we do February 14th first. And then we recognize that we don't have enough time to decorate, so we move to February 21st.
First, okay. Well, thank you, and I hope to be able to come by. But if I don't make it, I hope you have a lovely event as always. We appreciate you coming in.
And on behalf of the Vietnamese community of Oregon, I want to send you this certificate of thank you note.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, moving on. Community comments. This is the part of the agenda during which council will hear community comments on city business items that are not on the agenda. Before we begin, is there follow-up from the January 6th? No, it would be the January 20th comments, Mr. Brulio.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. A few things I'll catch up on. First of all, we received two pieces of correspondence today. One from the neighbors on Lava Drive about some road repair that they wanted to have for a couple of years and hopefully get it on the CIP for this summer. And our Public Works Director, Peter, has already been in contact with them, and it is supposed to be scheduled for this summer. The other piece was Mrs. Bird reached out with some concerns about the 3% fee, credit card fee on utilities. And I know our finance director will be speaking to a little bit of that later this evening.
Yeah, she's not really objecting to the fee. She's objecting that it's not easier to pay by giving your bank account by a debit, from your bank account.
Yeah, so our finance director, I'm going to pass that over to him later on tonight to talk a little bit more. And then finally, Philip Moen last meeting talked about some of just the need for winter preparation for our roadways and just some best practices from the Midwest, and give a shout out to us actually for all the work that we do. Public Works directors back there, but our Public Works staff does a great job de-icing, keep us safe, and continue to work definitely better than Portland as a resident.
Yeah, you did note that for sure.
That's it. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. For those in person who wish to speak, please submit a yellow comment card down on the table. I don't have any of those. We don't have anyone on Zoom who wishes to speak.
We have no non-council member audiences.
On Zoom. Okay, so I can forego the rest of the community comments script, and we will move on to the consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda includes minutes of the City Council January 6, 2026 work session, January 6, 2026 regular session, and January 13th, 2026 site visit. Does any council member wish to remove a consent agenda item? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent agendas as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. The consent agenda is unanimously approved. Okay, so we get to the audit report. Finance Director Michael Osborne. And I assume one of our auditors.
What's that?
Do you want me to start?
Good evening, council. We are here to talk about the fiscal year 25 audit that encompassed from July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. A lot of work, staff time, and auditor time went into this. It's a 6-month process that ends on when we close the books on June 30th. Then kind of the finance department spends 3 months getting all our work papers and everything in line for preparation for the auditors to come out and review it. So it was a 6-month process that completed on 12/31 when we submitted our audit to the Secretary of State online. I want to note that there was a Oregon Live article a couple weeks ago that talked about the challenge that smaller cities are having with doing audits. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of cost to smaller cities, and I feel fortunate that for us, we have a great team and we have great auditors, and we make this a priority to do this audit. It shows transparency in our numbers and confidence in what we say and spend. So I think that's something that cities should be proud of. With all that said, I'll introduce Ashley Austin, who is our chief auditor with Baker Tilly. And then afterwards, I have a couple management responses to the presentation.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, Mayor and the rest of the City Council. I'm here to give you a snapshot of the results for the 2025 audit. Similar to last year, the presentation is structured in such a way that it kind of goes through 4 to 5 questions that we think you'd want to know as City Council, and then the various responses. So if you go to the next slide, quickly we'll talk through your service team who served your account this year. We'll talk about questions and the answers, as I mentioned, on the audit process, and then a high-level overview of our communications with those charged with governance, which was with the audit committee earlier in January. Go to the next slide. Okay, so I served as your engagement reviewer. That means that you'll see my individual signature as a requirement of Oregon municipal standards on your opinion. I'm overall responsible for the audit. Amanda Moore is a principal in our Medford location, and she helped pick up some things in the file, pick up the financial statements, do a technical review. She's a code reviewer, quality control reviewer, and she's great. She specializes in governments as well. And then Kelly Jones was my right-hand lady that helped supervise staff, do delegated review, and she is a senior manager out of our Eugene location. We were all on site, except for Amanda. Kelly and I were both on site throughout the audit process to supervise staff and review work papers and talk to management and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so the first question is, what does an audit of the city entail? So it's 5 different things. At first, it's an independent verification of your transactions and balances. So that means that we're going to inspect some source documentation. We're going to pull some invoices. We're going to look at some bank statements.
We're going to verify those balances that we can with third parties by sending confirmations. We're going to do some analytical review and inquiry procedures if those balances that we're performing analytics on don't necessarily meet our expectations. And then we're also going to do substantive testing procedures. So that's really, again, the show me portion of the audit. We're going to look at invoices. We're going to look at bank statements. We're going to confirm balances with third parties. We're also going to evaluate the effectiveness of internal controls. While we don't issue an opinion on internal controls, we are required to look at the design of the internal controls to determine if they're operating effectively, especially those key controls. So we did review those key controls in all significant transaction cycles. So that's including your financial close and reporting process, payroll process, revenue, disbursements. And we're looking to see in those key controls that we feel are operating effectively, we're going to test those to make sure that they are operating effectively. We're going to report any control weaknesses to you and to management. The third item that an audit entails is testing compliance with federal and state laws. So because you are an Oregon municipal corporation, you are required to comply with Oregon minimum audit standards. So we did test the adoption of the budget. We looked at your procurement process. We looked at various other things related to the Oregon minimum audit standards. And then because you receive and spend more than $750,000 of federal funding, we also are required to look at the federal grant compliance portion as well. And we perform testing over one major program under uniform guidance this year. Go to the next slide. The fourth area is just a technical review of the financial statements. So we're making sure that the balances that we actually audited are verified against the amounts that are in the financial statements. We're also doing a technical review to make sure that your financial statements meet all the GAAP, GFOA, state legal requirements, all those bells and whistles, because you do submit your financial statements to the GFOA to receive the Certificate of Excellence Award. And then finally, look at that supplementary information and make sure that it's presented accurately in relation to the financial statements as a whole. Finally, the fifth area is just reporting the audit results. So we did have regular check-ins with management. I mentioned we were here during field work, throughout the audit process and after we left. We also had an exit meeting with the audit committee in January, and then we are here tonight to report to you.
So, can you just give us a sense of how long you are here physically?
Yeah, so
A couple days?
no, so we came in the summer, right at like in August timeframe, and we're here 3 to 4 days for interim where we look at your controls. That's primarily what we're doing. We're also doing some planning, looking at your year-end numbers, looking at prior years, setting materiality, doing some documentation, interviewing some folks, doing our risk assessment. So that's 4 days. And then during final field work, we were here for about 2 weeks. It crossed over Veterans Day when we were closed. We were closed, so it was about 8 days over 2 weeks during around November, in November. Okay, so question number 2, are the financial statements accurate? So our procedures, I just mentioned we perform that risk assessment to really focus in on the significant risk areas. We do set a materiality. We don't audit every single dollar or every single transaction. We're testing those internal controls for effectiveness. We're performing substantive testing, technical review of the financial statements, everything that I just talked about. So what were the results? We did issue an unmodified opinion, meaning our financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with U.S. generally accepted accounting principles. Clean opinion, what you want to hear. That's the highest level of assurance that you can receive. Okay, question number 3. Did the city comply with federal and state laws and regulations? So again, we're performing a risk assessment. That's where all of our audit procedures start to identify those applicable and significant compliance requirements. And then we're also performing compliance testing, not only over the Oregon laws, but also over the federal grants that you receive to be sure that you're in compliance with all of the direct and material compliance requirements. So the results for the Oregon minimum standards, we did have one material weakness that we identified, which will be a theme throughout the remainder of the presentation. No compliance findings. So compliance findings would be if we were over budget in any particular area. That's where that would be reported, would be in this opinion in the second box here. The material weakness that was identified was as a result of a material adjustment that was posted to depreciation. So management identified there might be an error, provided it to us. We performed some analysis on that and determined that the city was depreciating significant assets faster than what the useful life truly is. For example, your library was put in service a few years ago, and the life of that library is probably 40 years. You probably need to depreciate it over 40 years, but it was being depreciated over 10 years.
Oh,
So
wow.
you were taking a lot of depreciation in every single year for 10 years. I will mention we were your auditors last year. I think we've had 3 sets of auditors over the course of the last 5 years. They missed it last year. Management was the one who brought it to our attention, and we did the analysis to determine that it was significant enough where we needed to do a prior period restatement. Management needed to adjust the financial statements. And when we have a material adjustment like that, the standards really tie our hands on how to report that. So it's being reported as a material weakness under your financial reporting.
Reported to the state of Oregon, you mean?
It's included in your financial statement reports.
Okay.
So it was included as a finding in the back of the reports. And Michael will have a management response related to that material weakness at the end of my presentation. In terms of a single audit, this is, the federal funds audit. We pick a bucket of funding that we perform testing on. This year it was ARPA. We looked at all the direct material compliance requirements, focusing on allowable costs, reporting, cash management, subrecipient monitoring, if you had any. Again, one material weakness was identified, which is the same the depreciation material weakness is the same one in this box. It's the one above it. No compliance findings. So there were no compliance findings with respect to how you spend your federal funding. You complied with all your direct material compliance requirements related to that bucket of funding. So otherwise, clean opinion. To go to the next slide.
Can I clarify, actually?
Yes.
Material weakness, what is the consequence of that being identified, or what's your effect as a result of that?
In my opinion, a one-time material weakness has no ramifications because management identified it, they corrected it, we reported it. It's not going to reoccur next year. We're going to be able to, likely, I'm assuming, going to be able to say this has been corrected and management is no longer depreciating those items over 10 years or whatever, a shorter lifespan than it really needed to be. If you were to receive findings over a period of time that were the same finding every single year, especially if they were related to your federal funds, which this one is not. This is related to financial reporting. It's not related to your federal funding. But if you were to receive a similar finding every single year, then those funders that provide you with funding could potentially pull that funding.
That's all. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Question number 4, did the audit identify any fraud, waste, or abuse? Things that we do, we evaluate your internal controls. We do a brainstorming session just to identify any significant risk areas that we haven't already identified. We also interview individuals throughout the city, including people that are outside of the financial accounting department. We ask questions like, do you know about any fraud? Have you been asked to do anything that you don't feel comfortable doing, etc. And as a result of all those procedures, we didn't have any reportable matters of fraud, waste, or abuse. The next slide covers what we discussed with the audit committee. So we had an in-depth discussion that included all of our required communications with the audit committee back in January. A couple of things that you will want to know as City Council, we discussed our corrected audit adjustment already, that prior period adjustment that totaled $22.3 million. We had a few minor proposed adjustments, but I'm not going to go into detail here. A proposed adjustment is one that we identify. It's over our findings threshold that's judgmentally set by the auditor. And we present it to management and say, would you like to post it? It's not material, so you can pass, and they passed on it, but we are required to report it to the audit committee, which we did. No difficulties encountered in performing the audit, so that means everyone that we wanted to talk to, we were able to have access to every piece of information that we requested from management. They were very quick to get it to us, and there were no disagreements with management about an accounting or auditing matter, which is great.
But can you clarify more about that adjustment? 22 million?
That was the prior period adjustment. related to depreciation. So the matter has been going on for several years where there's been many assets in your asset ledger that have been depreciated too quickly. And so as part of management's analysis, they went through every single asset that you own to make sure that the asset life was corrected in order to be more of what its actual useful life is. And so as a result of all of that analysis that they performed, it resulted in this $22.3 million adjustment.
That's a big number.
Yeah, it is. It is a big number. But it's a non-cash number. You increased your net position and increased your assets because you were taking too much depreciation expense over the years. So overall, it was a positive. I mean, the prior period adjustment is never positive, and the material weakness that resulted is never positive, but your financial statements actually look a little bit better now. If you go to the next slide, acknowledgements, just a quick note to let you know that we had regular communications with city management, with staff throughout the finance department. Everybody was super responsive. We had a joke during the audit committee meeting that Judy provided us information within 3 minutes of us asking for it. So your staff were very responsive, and then just the tone at the top is great. One of openness and just willingness to discuss our concerns and questions and items that we think the city can do better on. If you go to the next slide, that concludes my prepared remarks. Happy to answer any questions that you might have before Michael goes through his management response, or happy to hold them to questions. Or
If I could I do the management response now and then have you guys question? Maybe we'll answer some of your questions. So last week, Ashley, on January 28th, we met with the audit committee, which Robert is a part of. And I presented this management response for the corrected prior period adjustment and material weakness. So I just wanted to read through what I shared with the audit committee. The corrected prior period adjustment and material weakness. This was related to capital assets and how we determine the useful life of an asset. In the past, beginning between 2010 and 2015, the city established an aggressive standard for determining the useful life of its assets that continued until this year. One example is our public library. The city used a 10-year life for determining the use of this asset. Staff, Matt and Judy, while preparing for this year's audit, discovered that some of our assets were on this aggressive timeline and the book value was low. They brought this to management and my attention, and I brought it to our auditors, Baker Tilly. Initially, we had planned to correct this in the next fiscal year. However, later it was determined with Baker Tilly that it was significant enough impact to make the corrections in this fiscal year. Staff, with guidance from Baker Tilly, made a reassessment of the useful life of approximately 140 assets and updated them to a less aggressive life schedule. Major kudos to Matt and Ashley, who worked up until Christmas Eve in order to correct this to file in time for the 12/31/2025 deadline. Management is evaluating the current asset policy, and if changes are necessary, specifically with estimated useful lives if changes are necessary with the estimated useful lives, we'll go and look at this process through the budget process coming up. Management will be implementing improved controls to ensure capital assets are depreciated over a reasonable and useful life going forward, as discussed in the Act. To be clear, this had no direct cash implications, nor did it impact any of our fund balances. This only affected the government-wide financial statements towards the beginning of the Act, not the fund statements. The city was over-aggressive in estimating the life of the assets. We take this matter seriously and will improve going forward. This was a practice that dated back 10 plus years and had previously been reviewed by 3 audit firms in the past. So a couple things. It's management's discretion on the life schedule that you can use for assets. And I think that this came about when, in about 2015, I guess, we had moved from an Excel-based fixed asset program to something called Asset Keeper Pro. Excuse me.
And when we did that, I believe that the life schedule in that software is kind of just probably the default of it. I don't think that the software is bad or we were bad. I think it's just something that was overlooked at the time, and that we just now, through Matt and Judy, looked at this, and the library was a glaring example of, hey, we're depreciating this way too fast. So we're correcting it going forward, and we corrected it to make the prior period adjustment to bring it up to date now. Going forward in our budget process, I want to talk about our fixed asset policy and updating that to a term that we all think is reasonable. Ashley gave us a suggestion that we kind of used for this go around, which I think is kind of the litmus test that we can use for reasonability for a lifespan. And we can talk about that through the budget process. That's kind of all I had on that. If you guys have questions, feel free to ask.
Okay, does anyone have questions? Okay,
Highlight again is that once this was discovered, they sort of just didn't look at the one discovery. They sort of opened the box, and it was kind of Pandora's box.
yeah,
And it was over 140 items. The libraries, they're an example, but there was all kinds of stuff. I don't know, street sweepers or whatever, or welding machines or whatever. And so there was a lot of midnight oil burned, in the week between Christmas and New Year's to get this right. And so I not only want to thank the staff for getting this done, because I think that's the right decision to fix it when you find it, and not, take it to the next year. And I also want to thank Ashley and her team for helping your folks in getting those things valued appropriately.
To piggyback off that, Matt did 90% of the work on this, and he stayed a lot of late nights and worked up to Christmas Eve. So major kudos to him for really bringing us over the finish line.
great. Well, I will comment that in that 2010 to 2015 timeframe, there was a heavy, 2015 was my first year on council, but I know there was a heavy turnover of finance directors. There was like a new finance director almost every year. So it doesn't entirely surprise me that there were some things maybe not given enough scrutiny back then. So kudos to the team for finding it. Yeah. I have a question I wanted to ask. I haven't seen the article you referred to about the burden on cities, but I will definitely look that up tomorrow. But is it state law that we have to do this every year, even though we're doing a biennial budget? We can't do the audit just at the end of the biennium?
Yes, it is a state requirement that you submit your financial results for the fiscal year by 12/31. If you receive federal funding, then you're required to submit that audit to the federal clearinghouse by 3/31/26. So you've done both. You submitted to the state, I think on 12/30 or 12/31, and then we submitted to the federal clearinghouse in January. So you've met both requirements, but it is a state requirement that you do it every year.
Every year.
Yep.
Okay.
Lucky for you.
I remember when we went to buy, and it seemed like such a relief to go to a 2-year budget, but we still have to do this part of it every year. Okay. If no other questions, we will thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Michael, stick around and talk about utility code updates.
Good evening again, council. Here to talk about the second part of sorry, I didn't have my microphone on. This is the second part of a utility code update discussion from September. Kind of to start to kick this off in my headspace is why I bring this up is I started here with the city about 2.5 years ago, and started with kind of seeing the utility billing process. And kudos to Joe Gardner, who kind of started this process, and then other people have kind of trickled in over the years. But I've kind of taken the last 2 years to see what the process is and kind of what changes that we should make or that I'm proposing to make. And the code changes are a big deal and hard to make. So I'm kind of doing this in small bites as they come up. So my focus is, as I do this, is to make our job as a city to administer the utility billing easier and more defined. And I sit outside of our current utility biller, Amy Francis, who does a wonderful job. And I hear the conversations that she has with residents. And there's a lot of ambiguity in the current code that we're trying to clean up. So tonight, that kind of evolving discussion, I'm bringing another piece to you. And then later on in next year, further in the summer, I'll kind of bring back all these proposed changes in a redlined version to council so that you can kind of read through it and see what the overview is. But tonight I just want to focus on one specific area. So just to bring us up to speed, what we discussed at the last time we met during work session in September was four things. The ownership of service lines. We wanted to clarify and define where the city responsibility ends and private ownership begins. And I believe that we came to the agreement that it divides at the water meter. The water meter to the residents is private, and then from the water meter back into the infrastructure the city maintains. Second is temporary water service. Clearly define that temporary water service only applies to construction activities, not general use. Responsibility for leaks, reduce ambiguity over who pays for the repairs when leaks occur on different sides of the meter. Then this goes to, we use the water meter as the divide line. If anything is on the water meter up to the residents, that's on the resident and property owner to, if they're responsible for leaks. Anything from the water meter, including the water meter, back to the infrastructure, that's for the city. And then the last one is kind of water change or delinquency. This is upstating the kind of the rigid code where we had in there that we said specifically on the third Thursday of every month that we were to do shutoffs, and 2 days prior to that we do late notices. We kind of want to make that a little more vague and give us a little bit more flexibility of like 3 to 5 days. That makes it easier for the public works folks as holidays and things come up, that we're not trying to fit a large amount of stuff into a small amount of time. So those are things that we discussed in September that I think we had clarity on, and I'll revise it and bring to you this summer. However, tonight's proposal, I wanted to kind of look at the definition of property owner and kind of who is responsible for the account. And the two loosely additions that I'm proposing is one, the definition of a property owner. Currently, we don't have anything for property owner, but I want it to read as property owner, individual or entities that legally own the property within the city, And with this, we can kind of eliminate the consumer definition in the current code. On top of that, this might be cut off a little bit, but update the water charges portion, which is 13.04.100. The current wording is the consumer shall be responsible for all water consumption. What I'm proposing to update be is property owners are responsible for all water supplied to their property until a notice of termination of ownership and reasonability or reasonable proof of new ownership is provided to the city utility billing office. Any exceptions for good cause are determined by the city manager or finance director. So kind of what I'm saying in this is that we're kind of broadening it down to right now, all of our accounts, they can be to tenants, they can be to renters, they can be to property owners. If anybody can come in here and sign up for a water billing account, that makes a huge challenge for us to administer. And I'll give the reasons why going forward. But I think if we choose to just make it in the property owner's name, it would be easy for us to tie it back to an asset so that if we need to lien a property, go back on something, we have an asset to go back against. Give me a little leeway here and I'll further explain. Why is the change needed? This allows to the city to lien properties with an outstanding balance, tying an asset to the property. So kind of an example that came up, the city used to have a water agreement with CRW. We have people that currently live inside Milwaukie city limits that get their water from Clackamas River Water. But all of their other fees, utility, storm, street, safeties, they're still responsible for. There's a small portion that if they decide not to pay their utility bill, we don't have a mechanism to, we don't have leverage to have them pay the bill. We can't go and shut their water off because of delinquency. What I'm proposing in this is if we tie it to the property owner, that then we could go and place a lien on the property so that the city is in a position, if the owner sells, to recoup those funds for the funds missed that we're not capturing if they choose not to pay. The second is, sorry, trying to follow. This moves away from the sending past due accounts to collections. Collections is kind of how we've done it in the past, and it's not the best way. We really collect a small amount of money that goes to a collections agency. There's a lot of fees involved, and there's not a mechanism. It goes on their credit report, but I don't know how much that impacts people going forward. Tying it to an asset for the purpose of liening gives the city more leverage. This also reduces gaps in tenant responsibility. So when a renter leaves, the property owner would be responsible for the fees. So right now we have a renter come in, they stay for 6 months and then they leave, and that location is vacant for 3 months. There's nobody paying water, city, utility during that period. And by switching it from tenant to property owner, in this circumstance, the property owner would continue to pay the city fees even while the property is vacant. This keeps continuity of payments for all city fees, the water, storm, waste, street, safe, all those fees that we have in addition to the water. And finally, this reduces disputes. There's a lot of start-stop requests that Amy gets for, hey, a tenant moves in and I want to start it on this date, and maybe the tenant owner has, or the property owner has it on a different date. there's a lot of when they're moving out as of the 15th, and maybe the property owner has it on the 20th. When you have one person accountable for this being the property owner, it makes it as easy to have one voice that we're listening to during that process. It's also better for billing and leaks. If there's a leak in the house, who's responsible? The property owner. The tenant can let the property owner know if there is a leak, and the property owner can go and fix it. But it's not as having to work with renters or a property owner. It's just defining it that we're going to the property owner to fix it. And also, it gives us a criteria for signing for an account. Right now, a lot of people, tenants and things, can just come and sign up for an account. And we don't really have a process to verify and vouch for that. If we tie it to the property owner, we can go back to like county records and look back to make sure, oh, we see that this person bought this house at this specific date, and we can tie it to the person so that they're responsible for the account going forward. How this would go into effect. So this is a big change, and I've noticed that like with a lot of things we've done this year, the billing changes, the credit card fee or the processing card fee and other things, people don't like change, and it kind of messes with how the flow goes. We recognize that, and this would be on a going forward basis. So we're not saying as of a certain date we want to do this. We just want to say that once we update the code, that all accounts previously set up would stay. So I think the mayor had an example of somebody who's had a house for 15 years and they've been renting to different people. For the meantime, this would stay the same. But once there's a change in who's in the house, we would then update this on a going forward basis. So if the property was sold or if the renter vacates, then going forward, we could set it up to be in the property owner's name. This follows other city and county models. West does this, City of Sandy does this, and it's kind of a growing trend because it ties the account to the property owner, which you can then tie to a physical asset. Property owners could include, we kind of have the idea that for property owners that they could increase this into the cost of the lease to have the tenant pay them directly. Or if they wanted to send this to a different account, we could have alternative mailing accounts done. So if like somebody has a property management company, that even though it's tied to the property owner, we could send it to whoever they want, tenant or property management company, to get the bill, to pay the bill. The city is not concerned on who pays the bill. We just want to make sure that it's in the property owner's name. And finally, this would just start out to be for residential single-family homes to start. We want to see how this model works and then talk about going down with the money from then. But this is just for residential. We kind of thought about, as we're doing this, how this affects low income and people on utility assistance. Amy Francis, who's brilliant, kind of has an idea, which we're not sure 100% how this would work, but her idea is that this could improve and streamline the process for utility billing. In that a property owner could provide HUD-approved documentation to make sure that the rental units are eligible, and to provide that to the city in place of the renter's utility assistant application coming in on a yearly basis. We would get these HUD documentations, which would show that it's a HUD housing, that the house is maintaining the certain qualities and aspects to meet HUD housing, and keeping rents reasonable, comparable to similar properties in the region. Property owners could then submit this HUD documentation on a yearly basis during the utility assistance verification process. So it would take the onus off the renter to fill out the form for the utility assistance. It would put it on the owner if he's got documentation to provide that for us and make a more streamlined approach. I just want to state that currently utility assistance renters would not be affected by this. So, staff conclusions, why are we doing this? Really to help streamline the setup process and reduce ambiguity, improve consistencies in billing. There's a lot of things where Amy and I are having to make decisions on the fly on how we administer these accounts. And if we could just tie it to the property owner, we feel that that would make it easier for everybody. It helps secure past due balances to an asset so we can loan property, and hopefully reduces shutoffs and collections because for property owners, if a renter goes into shutoff and they're in shutoff status, that means the house doesn't have water, and that affects the property owner in that you're not seeing water being circulated to that property. By this, we hope that the property owner would step in beforehand to pay the bill because it's in benefit to them to keep the water moving and to keep water coming to the property. So we're hoping that that would incentivize owners to step in between before it gets to the shut-off process. Also, as I kind of alluded to before, this reduces the gaps in the property billing when the city isn't collecting. So if there's no tenant or no renter in the house, we could still collect the other city fees for water, storm, waste, and street during that time. There would be less gap if the renter leaves and there's a 3-month vacated period. The city would not go without those fees during that time. So kind of my next step is tonight, I know I've said a lot and probably confused a lot of this, but kind of discuss this, kind of get what your initial thoughts are for changing this, tying this just to the property owner, and then come back later this spring with kind of take all of our input, put it together, and then maybe have a third meeting where we bring a red line code to everybody. We can look at that before adoption. So with that, questions?
I see he's coming out, but I'll go ahead and start. So I want to kind of just run through some scenarios and see what you have in mind in terms of how they play out. So I'm the renter of property X, and I'm vacating on February 28th. I call the city. I say, I'm vacating on February 28th, so please here's the address to send my final bill. And, I turn off the service after that. Then you get that notice. Is that what prompts you to go find out who the owner is?
Yes.
And so you find the owner and you contact the owner and you say, your tenant's leaving. You now have to put the utilities in your name.
Yes.
Okay. And how do they make an so in the example I sent you by email, I have a friend who has a rental house out of unincorporated Clackamas County that he's had the same renter still for 15 years. So if he was to get the bill and then have to send it to them every month, that seems onerous. So you're saying the owner could be the applicant, but could say, please bill these people.
Kind of two things. One, in your case, if he's had the same renter for 15 years, they can still go on this course. We're not asking him to change as of a certain date. It's just once those renters leave, we would update it. The second thing is we could add an alternative address for it. So it would still be in the property owner's name, but it would go to the house address. At that point, I'm assuming that the property owner and the tenant would make an agreement on is who's paying for this? Is it included in your lease, or is it something that you have to pay? If the renter wants to pay it, they can pay it. We're not objecting who can pay it. We just wanted to limit the amount of people who are able to get accounts with us, because we need to tie that to an asset in property.
I think Councilor Costa agreed with us.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. My question is, you know, I'm looking at this from the property owner's perspective. So if a property owner has a tenant and there's a dispute between the two, there's a disagreement or whatever, the tenant seems to have no recourse. Like if the tenant decides not to pay the water bill because they're in a disagreement with the homeowner, the lien's going to affect the homeowner. It's not going to affect the tenant. That lien's going to affect the homeowner's ability to refi, sell, their ability to, it's going to hurt their credit, it's still public records. So what avenues does the property owner have to get the tenant to pay so that the lien is removed off of their property? Like the tenant doesn't have a reason to pay at this point, right? It all falls on the property owner right now. And I'm having a hard time understanding, like.
So a couple things in that. Well, one, this removes the city from being the middleman in that. So in that kind of example, if they didn't pay, currently right now, that balance would be past due. And then for the renter, the city would send them to collections, and our likelihood of recapturing the cost is small. In the aspect that you say, I'm not familiar with how property owners can enforce rent, but I'm assuming that they would have an agreement and hey, you had your rent and you had your utilities that you have to pay and you didn't pay these. I think that I can't speak to how they would go and get that route. I would say that this is also not 100% perfect situation, and like we don't have all the I's dotted and T's crossed, and that's why kind of in those circumstances I put it comes to city manager and finance director discretion. So I feel like as a city we would work with the property owner in that. If he's like saying, hey, we have somebody in there who's not paying our bill, and we don't want the property owner to rack up the bill with that. We would work with them to find the solution before it gets to the lien purpose. Yeah, I think the last line of defense for us and recouping some costs, I think in the end. But I think to answer your question, because of other bodies, it would be like a civil lawsuit between.
That's the thing. We're putting an undue. Basically putting it on the responsibility of the homeowner just to make it easier on us, is what it sounds like. That's where I'm having a problem with that, because it's almost like, hey, you got to take them to court, and you got to pay all that, you have to deal with that. That's fine. We just want our money. So we're not actually holding the person liable, accountable. Like if the renter's liable to pay that, but they're not, there's nothing, the lien does nothing to the renter. The lien only impacts the homeowner.
If I can just add one thing, this is a fairly common approach to utility billing. So one of the, the tool that's still out there is the shut off. So if the tenant is not paying the bill, or the property owner is not paying the bill, we're going to still shut off the utility. So that means that, it's not really habitable if you're not having water in that home. So that's one of the recourses. If I suppose if the landlord is having problems with the tenant paying their utility bill, they might request that service to be shut off, right? So that's the recourse there.
But there's still the lien, though.
Well, the lien is once that bill reaches a certain threshold and it's gone unpaid for a period of time, and we can't come to an agreement with the account holder, which in this case would be the property owner, then we're going to put a lien on the property. Because the property owner is responsible for that piece of property,
Right. And right now, they don't have the punishment, I should say, of a lien for something that their tenant is doing, right? Like if their tenant is not paying the bill, why is the property owner having to pay the price for a lien on their property? Like, a lien is not a joke. A lien is a pretty significant deal. So
So before it gets to the lien though, we're going through that process of shutting off the service.
right, but there's still a balance. And if that rent, if they're having a hard time getting the money from the renter, and let's say the property owner is not willing to pay them, so it just I feel like it almost relieves the tenant of responsibility for their own bill. Like, how do you go after the tenant?
I mean, that's up to the property owner and the contract that they make with the tenant when they're
You
going.
see what I'm saying? We're
That's-
putting an undue and unnecessary level of responsibility on the property.
The property owner is the one who's benefiting from having a tenant. I mean, they are profiting.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, for Milwaukie, a lot of our senior community members are landlords, and that's the only way they can make money is through their rental. That's how they make money because they're retired. I mean, that's not fair that they got to be stuck with a lien because they tried to help somebody out renting a property and that person decided not to pay their bill. It's the renter's responsibility. And we're asking the property owner to basically be our enforcer, is what it seems like.
Another approach to we have keys that property. We get privacy connection. For the property to be connected to our city infrastructure and get our city services and all that, that's something that is being paid into by those fees. So as a city, we're saying for this that we want to tie that to the property owner versus the tenant. Because in the tenant aspect, there's nothing that backs that debt.
Other than the collection, we send it to collection, right?
Collection.
That's the thing, and I get the reason behind it, but I'm just saying that it doesn't make it right. Yes, it doesn't make it okay, because again, we're passing the buck. We're basically making it the responsibility of the homeowner to collect the water fee. I mean, if you're renting, you're responsible for certain things, right? So, it's almost like with squatting. It's the same thing.
I would say,
Take your house over, there's nothing you could do until you go to court.
I would say we're making the property owner responsible for the use of their property. And in the case of where they are renting the property, they're responsible for how they manage that property and make sure that the services that the city is providing that property for that use is being paid. So that's how I guess that's how I would look at it. So
I would say the renter is responsible because they're using the property.
well, the renter is responsible, and in most cases pays that fee. And in those cases where it's gone beyond that piece where it's reached past the shutoffs and the bills have accumulated to an amount that makes it reasonable to go out and name a property, and that means there's perhaps the property owner hasn't really paid attention to that property and managed it as well as they should have. So, I mean, it's not, you're not gonna leave a piece of property for, $100.
Yeah, of course, you're gonna spend more money on a lien than you are gonna.
And I want to work with the property owner. This just incentivizes the property owner to be a good steward of the land and also to go to the renter and work with that renter and I guess rent to.
I think your concern is highlighted, and I appreciate hear some of your comments back about responsibility for using the property. I think in this conversation, when it comes to just having a tool, I think that's primarily what we're talking about, because when you hear how we process folks and how often we get to basically the worst case, putting a lien on some of these properties. Not something we've taken lightly and that we do often, ever. Or I shouldn't say ever. We do it sometimes, but those are like really terrible cases. We do try to work with just about everybody. And sometimes, in my opinion, sometimes too long. So it's not for a lack of wanting to make that the immediate action. But I hear your concern. I don't think that doesn't sound like we're gonna solve it maybe tonight, but I can hear your concern.
Okay, I'll go on to the council president.
That was a helpful back and forth. As someone who argues was probably a lot. It was nice to see someone else in the ring here. Peter, I appreciate your point about this is essentially saying a property owner is responsible for the use of the property. Even still, I have some concerns that I want to tease out with you all. As I was reading the packet, the first thing that came to mind for me was how this would impact our fees that can go, and whether this would make them constitute a tax under Measure 5. There's a bunch of case law around this. After Measure 5 was imposed, there's been some cases that kind of look at the nature of the tax. And before we take a vote on this in the end, I would want our city attorney to weigh in on this. I'm going to just read a few provisions. The Roseburg School District versus City of Roseburg. This is looking at the definition of a tax as it applies in Measure 5. A tax is any charge imposed by a government unit upon property or upon a property owner as a direct consequence of ownership that the property accept incurred charges and assessments for local improvements. And in the Roseburg case, a key finding that showed that their fee was a fee, not a tax, was that the city had no lien provision and the city had no mechanism for assessing default liability.
What was the first one?
That the city had no lien provision that could burden the property, and the city had no mechanism for assessing default liability exclusively against the property owner as a direct consequence of ownership. When Jacksonville, as a city, applied a separate utility fee, $15 back in 2003, I think, their fee was struck down because they put a lien on the property and they assumed default liability on the property owner. And we say in this on the slideshow, this will help us collect other city fees. I'm just worried that this structure might then fall afoul of Measure 5. I know Jackson. You've got a great city attorney who can weigh on this. I would want him to just parse through this a little bit. I will say this was my initial gut reaction for reading the packet. It helps. I'm sure that West and Wilsonville and other states have thought through the legal implications of what we're doing. But this concern, I guess, is just what popped in for me.
Councilor Massey.
Three words on both sides of this argument, and this is a mess. And I understand why you're concerned about it. You're trying to make something that is a mess right, but I'm not sure the proposal is any cleaner. So I got to tell you, I don't have an answer for this. I'm not even sure which side I fall on at this point. But I understand Councilor Kutzabadi's point of view, but I also understand Peter's points of view. So I've heard that Peter say this is a common practice. I've heard him mention West. I've heard Sandy. I'd like to know more.
I know Oak Lodge.
Okay.
Does it as well. I have a rental property in Oak Lodge, and I get a bill from Oak Lodge, and they count as in my name. Okay. And then my son he also gets a bill too and pays it.
Okay, so for the moment, I'll say, yay, verily, I'm with you. But it still sounds complicated to do it. And, timing and bills and the landlord's bills and trying to sync those up without creating, the landlord having to deliver two bills and who pays it and that kind of thing. It just, I urge us to look for an elegant solution somewhere, and maybe someone's gotten me. But I don't think either one of these is an elegant solution at this point, from what I've heard. One other small thing, get the city manager out of this process. Don't say that the city manager and the finance director you can make these decisions. That's what you're.
Our code generally puts the city manager as that decision.
Well, that's true of everything.
Right. City manager or designee. I mean, that's typically how we.
This process should be in Michael's hands. Okay, I don't think we have to call out the city manager making the decision. If they're, it just to me adds more confusion to what I think is already a confusing thing. Like, oh well, okay, the city manager's decision. That's how I read it. Like.
I would just clarify in that I'm just saying the city manager, if we need to make an adaptation or a call or something on the side, which I think we both agree with, that city manager or finance director can make that call. I'm just trying to be clear with
I just think the city manager, I just think the finance director can be doing that. That's my opinion. Neil? Okay, well, I disagree with you, okay? And I know about managing large organizations.
So if I can speak for Amy, because I can hear her, she said this to me. The process that we have now is really complicated. And we're trying to make it less complicated by tying it to the property owner, which is still complicated. There's not an easy solution for any of this. And that's why I'm saying we want to go it on a going forward basis. And we know it's change and people don't, and not everybody likes change. But I think from a city aspect, it's easier to administer it to a property owner rather than somebody who can be there 2 years and then leave and doesn't have roots in the city, kind of, so to speak.
I understand. I just think both sides of this is not giving me what I think is a really clean, elegant solution to this thing. And so I urge this not dig in on either one of these. Maybe there's a better way to do it out there, and I'd urge us to look for it.
Does Councilor Stavanger have her hand up? No? Okay. Well, on the question of whether she stays city manager or finance director, I'll defer to staff to figure that out ahead of bringing us a red line. I will say, as a general rule, we have had our code say the city manager or designee to preserve all the flexibility in the city manager to make those determinations. There may be a period where they're between finance directors and they'd rather have it be a public works director or et cetera, et cetera. So that's my understanding of kind of how we've generally approached that, but I'll defer to staff to sort that out. In terms of Councilor Body's concerns about the unfairness to the property owner, I mean, I do share that concern to some degree. I do think the nature of the notice, like going back to my example, I'm the renter and I give you my notice that I'm moving on February 28th, the speed and the language of the notice that you then send to the property owner, to me, is sort of paramount in terms of ensuring fairness and ensuring notification. Like, our policies have changed. At the termination of this, you on notice that the bill is your responsibility. However, whatever agreements you make with your tenant are between you, but from here on out, you're the responsible party. I mean, I think we can, put property owners on notice of their need to pay more attention to that the next time they lease the property, kind of thing. It's not perfect, but I think we can, try to make help property owners understand that switch. So I don't think that's insurmountable, I guess, in my view.
Just one other thing that I would mention too, that I think Michael talked a little bit about it, but one of the outcomes of the way that we bill now and the way that we change accounts is we have loss of revenue on our utilities, particularly our stormwater utility. That goes unbilled for a period of time, and that impacts all of our ratepayers, right? So that's what we're trying to do, is like recover the costs of that, and with trying to keep our rates low and affordable. So, you know, we're billing people and billing properties. Properties, as it relates to stormwater, are billed on impervious surface area. It doesn't matter if somebody is, you know, at home or, you know, at the store. It's based on that impervious surface area, or they've moved out, I should say.
And before I call on Councilor Kostrady, I'll just note on the mayors, there's a listserv of mayors, you know, floating questions by each other. And one of the issues was some of the coastal communities that have seasonal people were, you know, were having like seasonal bills, and they were like, yeah, that's not really fair to the other residents in our town that they're, you know, that this bill's only paid 3 or 4 months out of the year. So they did, some of them have been moving to putting it on the owner and not being tied to the amount of time the place is occupied. Councilor Kostrady.
I just have a question that I thought of, just a potential unintended consequence, and maybe this is just me thinking too much, but do you feel that this might potentially potentially force property owners to be more selective before they rent, maybe not rent to lower income individuals or lower income families who tend to maybe not pay the bills on time typically? You think this might push them in a direction and start renting to more affluent residents, potentially?
I don't see that, and that's not the purpose of this.
Not our purpose.
Yeah,
as a property owner, if you know that you're going to be held liable.
and that's why I kind of we put in the HUD possibility there, that there are ways to work through this. That's not our purpose in this.
I know, your property owners are going to look out for their own interest. They're not going to look out for the city.
It would also be a breach in fair housing law.
But who's going to know? How are you going to know that they denied you because you don't make enough money? True. They can say another applicant came in that we felt more comfortable with. True. Convinced of that. So that's what I'm saying. There's ways they can do that.
I'm just saying there is some law, like I said, at least.
Right. It's not very well enforced.
All right.
There's nothing else on that. Before Michael leaves, I also had wanted him to address the comment that was raised by Joanne Bird about why we can't have an easier debit option for people who don't want to pay the 3% credit card fee. So can you kind of walk us through that, please?
I come up with a little bit of history slideshow with this and kind of point on all these. So the processing card fee, or payment processing card fee, has been pretty popular with a lot of comments in the last month. Kind of the history of how we got this point was we started the discussion in late 2024 as part of the city's new revenue strategies campaign. We implemented this on the fee schedule in June 2025. In that time, I worked with our merchant card company, Tyler Tech, to kind of implement a way for this merchant card fee. It wasn't an easy approach. They were building them on the fly as we were. So that lasted until 1/31 when we were able to kind of come to a way that worked for both of us. This is a 3% processing fee on all payment card transactions. This is automatically added to the transaction. If somebody comes in, they want to pay their bill, they go to pay, the 3% automatically comes on top of that. I want to clarify too, this is a processing fee for both credit and debit cards, and that's because our merchant card provider, Tyler, doesn't differentiate between the two. For them, it goes into the bank transaction processing mode, and they're assessing fees whether it's credit or debit. So the city is just it's costs either way. Why the additional fee? This was started to offset the growing cost of payment card transactions, which have been climbing a lot over the last 5 years. Who does the city pay this to? One, we have credit card companies, the big ones, Visa, MasterCard. That's the approximate 3% fee. It can change on the different types and amounts, but it's about 3%. On top of that, we have an added $2 per transaction charge that goes to our merchant processing company, Tyler Tech. So we have the 3% fee and the 2% fee. And then there's the banks. Our bank is Umpqua, and there's other banks. If somebody is paying that, we have fees associated with that too. Currently, the city paid last year $332,000 annually in these credit card or in processing charge fees. In 2015, it was $76,000. In 2021, it was approximately $160,000. These have been going up. I know that when I was at CRW, we talked about this a lot too, how to minimize that payment. The fees are going for security fees, processing fees, bank fees, and ever popular, the rewards fees. When people pay with credit card, you get a reward for that. This is how they're paying for that process. So additional ways to pay that we have, you can come in with a cash or check to City Hall, or mail it to our bank lockbox. To Joanne's point, we have a banking auto draft. You can initiate this by the customer's bank, where you go into your bank and you send us a check through your bank, or you can have the city auto draft it, and we have payments coming out 5th, 10th, 17th, and 24th of every month.
So you're saying people can pick which day of the month
they want, which day they want. There's a auto draft form that we have online. We revised it this month to kind of make it a little easier to find. I know it was it was buried a little bit, but we tried to bring it out. So you need to return that form with a copy or a check or something like that, so that we see your account numbers on it, so that we can then put it into our transaction software, so that we can then initiate the payment to come out of your bank. So the difference with this is the first part, the customer initiates the payment. And the second part, the city's just going in on a given day and kind of taking those funds from your bank account. We are, this is to Joanne's point, exploring the e-check option. And we were talking about this with Tyler, which is a way that they can go in and put their bank account number into the website and just have it taken from their account. The thing with that is there's additional fees with that. So as we're talking with Tyler, there's an additional, we have to, one, amend our agreement with them to start doing e-checks. And then they said there's a transaction fee, which I'm assuming is going to be about $2 per transaction. So that's another transaction fee on top of that. Also, we'd be subject to, there's delay in funding. So sometimes it can take a day to 3 days in order to fund that. Say that they fund it early and there's not sufficient funds in the account, they can come in and reverse those charges and take the money away. And then there's NSF fees. So what our goal with this is to give everybody an option to pay. If you want to pay credit card, debit card, you can do that. It's just we're trying to tie the transaction fee with that to the method that you choose. And the e-check we're exploring, I'm hoping in like the next 3 months we can have some traction on that. I know it is kind of a hassle and burden because folks are used, I know I'm used to paying one way, and when I can't do that way anymore, it gets kind of frustrating, and then it sounds like there's fees tracked onto that. What the city is doing is just trying to offset increasing fees that we've seen over the years. Rose. The ways I tried to communicate with this is I sent you all a one-pager on kind of the history about how we got to this point. We put that on the website. We added it to the news link, and we also updated the utility billing page with trying to clarify better the other ways to pay and how to do through auto draft. We did a pilot article coming out in February's edition of the pilot. And we also put a small notice on the December 31st to January 31st utility bill. I think that's how a lot of people, unfortunately, saw this. This is coming about. Conclusion, again, the opportunity of choice. We're trying to give people different ways to pay, but in today's modern world, unfortunately, there's a lot of costs associated with this, and it's going out to banks, credit card companies, and processing people. We're not profiting from this. We're trying to minimize the best that we can, the software that we can, but it's a challenge. I heard one person say it as they went to do PG&E, they tacked on a 3% fee. So I don't think we're the only ones that are doing this. As I go and pay for coffee, I'm paying a 3% fee. I think that this is becoming more of a trend. And there's other ways to pay. If you want to do the auto draft, I would suggest that would be a good way for Joanne Bird. I can reach out to her. The problem with that is people don't control the amount that comes out on those days. To that point, I'd say you can make it for the 17th or the 24th. And by that point, you've seen your bills. So if there's any disputes, you have 17 to 24 days to contact us. And we'll reach out to you and get it clarified before then so that whatever's coming out is the correct amount coming out of your bank.
Councilor Massey?
Yeah, when I read the email, can you go back a couple slides where you have the options? Or
That
that one, yeah. So when I read her email, I thought that she was saying that I had to, when I see auto draft, to me that means like the city's just gonna go into their bank and pull the money out, whatever it is, right? But there's the other option is still a draft from the bank through the ACH system that says, okay, I get my bill, I go to my bank, and then I type in what the bill says, and it's sent to you on whatever day you choose. You can choose the payment date. So I thought that would satisfy her concern. Does it not?
Well, I didn't understand that to be what this was saying. I thought auto draft was like bill pay, where you're just setting it up to automatically go
That's
out
what I'm
your
saying.
account.
But I don't know. Tell me if I'm wrong, but every bank I've ever had is you can just go in there and look at your bill and then say, no, it's not auto pay. It's not the city going in and pulling it, every month.
Going in and
It's
saying,
just, you're getting the bill in the mail or however you get it, and you say, okay, there's my bill, and I'm going to go put it in. I thought that would have been a useful solution for her based upon what I read, because I thought she was objecting to the auto pay, the auto draw. No,
yeah, she's looking for an option other than auto draw.
well, I think that option exists.
Do you?
I do too. I think there's a couple different ways. Like for me, I go into my Schwab account and I have, PGE City of Milwaukie already set on there.
Mhm.
And I put in the amount, and my Schwab bank sends a check, drafts a check, sends it to them. She can do that. But the city is not going in and drawing it from the Schwab account. That's what I'm saying. That's coming from the bank. See, I thought that would have alleviated her concerns, but maybe I didn't read your concerns.
So you're saying people can do that too?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. There is a fee, like their bank probably charges them for doing that. Mine does not. I've never had a bank charge for that. Some might not, but that initiates from the consumer or the customer function. And then at that point, you have control to pay what you want to pay. I can follow up to the email tomorrow. I just wanted to talk here with you all before.
No, I appreciate you doing that because I didn't understand. I mean, I have never done that myself, directed it from my bank, but I have paid GE on their website by putting in my routing number and my account number. I think that's what she was looking for, was that ability to put in her routing number and her account number and have it taken. But that's $2 of transaction or whatever.
You can, well, I'm just saying that I can put in all that information into my bank account. And when I get the bill, I look at it and I say, $100 for the 5th of the month, go.
Yeah.
And so I'm not having to continually go in to the PGE or Milwaukie Utility Department thing, and do that, because all of my bills that I pay that way are in my bank account. So, I don't know. I think that, to me, that's a kind of a critical difference from auto draft.
That's
Something that I think about with this, I believe there was a gentleman earlier last month that came here and talked to council about, like, we as a society ask people to go electronic payments. There's increasing fee to do that very thing that we told people to do. And he's not wrong, and I get that. I think we're all trying to find a way that works well for everybody. And unfortunately, credit card and rewards are popular at this moment, and hopefully some way we can find a way to reduce that down. But we're just, I'm conscious of this, trying to find a better way. I just haven't found it yet.
I do wonder from time to time how Venmo does it. Venmo doesn't charge you anything. How are they? Anyway, just a curiosity that this has prompted for me is what percentage, I mean, just roughly, I don't expect you to know exact, but what percentage of people still get a paper bill?
That's a good question. So last year we changed our billing process. We used to have a middleman EMS sending those bills out, and then we switched it to directly come out of Thailand payments, which is another thing of change that people were used to seeing their bill one way and now it's different. And I recognize that. With that, we got a number. We were really low on the amount of people that did electronic bills. I know that's increased. I can look for that number. I don't know what it is. Another outcome of this is that I believe we've had 60 more people sign up for auto bill pay, where the city's taking the money out of their account. So that's a good thing, because that helps reduce the city or the customer in that case. So that's one way to do it. I can find out those numbers.
I mean, it's not crucial. I just was curious. All right. Anything else on this topic for Michael?
Oh, I got a note here. There's approximately 5,600 paper statements filled out per month and 1,700 paperless.
Okay.
Answers in real time.
Yep. Cool.
Oh, thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. Cool.
And these are kudos to her, because I hear she deals with a lot of this stuff and she cares immensely about it. And the amount of effort that she put into that, I think we are fortunate to have somebody at the city who does this work in such a gracious way. So major kudos to Amy.
Okay. Well said. All right. Well, thank you. Council, before we go on, does anybody feel the need for a break? We're okay to keep going? Okay. So the next thing we have is the completion of our adoption of the tree code amendments. I'll grab some water. Okay. Continued public hearing on the proposed tree code amendments and fee schedule revisions is called to order. Because the first vote on the proposed ordinance at the January 20th regular session was not unanimous, the purpose of this continued hearing is to hear the second reading of the ordinance title, conduct the final roll call vote on the ordinance, and vote on the fee revisions resolution. And just to be clear, I am presiding over this, but I am actually abstaining from the vote on this because I wasn't present on January 20th. On January 20th, it was moved and seconded for the first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance amending Municipal Code Chapter 16.32 Tree Code for the purpose of strengthening tree preservation during development and declaring an emergency. The first voice vote on January 20th resulted in a 3-1 approval of the ordinance. As required by the city charter, because it was not a unanimous vote on January 20th, the ordinance title was read once, and a second reading and final roll call vote was scheduled for February 3rd. Acting City Manager Bruin, will please read the ordinance by title for a second time.
Sure, Mayor, thanks. An ordinance of the City of Milwaukie, Oregon, amending Municipal Code MMC Chapter 16.32, Tree Code for the purpose of strengthening tree preservation during development and declaring an emergency.
And Mr. Stoffer, would you please poll the council?
Councilor Body?
No.
Councilor Massey?
Aye.
Council President Anderson?
Aye.
Councilor Stavenford?
Councilor Stavanger? We probably should have taken a break. Okay.
Councilor Stavenford, are you there?
Hi, I'm back. I'm sorry, I had to step away.
We're calling the council on the second reading of the tree code.
How do you vote?
In favor.
Mayor Beatty?
I am abstaining as I was not present at the last meeting.
Motion is approved. 3 aye, 2, 1 no, and 1 abstention. The motion carries. Ordinance 2261.
Okay. And now I will entertain a motion to approve the proposed fee schedule revision resolution.
I move to approve the resolution revising fees and charges, updating the consolidated fee schedule for fiscal year 2026.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution revising fees and charges and updating the consolidated fee schedule for fiscal year 2026. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
So it also, and I am again abstaining. So it's again a 3-1 vote with 1 abstention. All right, is that all we need on that? Okay. All right, well, Katie didn't have to say a word.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming in. Okay. Council reports. We have legislative update. Yep. It's that time of year again. How crazy is it in Salem?
Pretty busy. Gotta be back by 7 o'clock tomorrow, so.
7 a.m. You got to be back there.
Yeah.
So the slides look very familiar from last time, except one thing is crossed out. We are now on the 3rd of February, which means the legislature has convened for their short session. There are the deadlines in pretty quick order this month, as to be expected. And when I prepared this earlier today, there's no bills being watched that I was aware of, and we don't have any letters. So I will stop sharing. That's all there is in there. Mayor Beatty, I know you did send this afternoon a list of legislation. Do you want me to pull that up at this time? Or
I don't think we have to pull it up tonight. I sent that for everybody's information, what the Metro Mayor's Consortium has considered worth following this year. I do think we would need to keep our eyes on some of the housing bills that are out there. I do think there's some stuff of concern there. But I did some outreach on a couple of things about whether I wanted to bring some letters for today, and in both cases, it didn't seem, in one case, it seemed like the bill was probably not moving, and then the another case, I was sort of discouraged from bringing a letter, so I don't have any letters for us to consider. But by the time we meet again on the 17th, can you show that's after the deadline, right? I mean, that will really be that'll be do or die, right? Because we meet again on the 17th, and then they're closing. So if we want to weigh in on anything, we need to have our letters drafted and pulled together and preferably shared with everyone ahead of the meeting on the 17th. So
Council is scheduled to have a study session next Tuesday, and that was noticed, but you could conceivably discuss legislation there as well if you want to check on it.
we could discuss legislation. Could we agree on a letter there?
You can come to consensus
Oh, okay,
about things you might want to then send individually or.
okay, fair enough. All right. You have any light you want to shed on the session for us?
We've had 2 days, nothing that crazy so far. I said in the last meeting that if we want to write a letter to bring bills forward today, but frankly, I don't see any bills that will be so impacted by a City of Milwaukie letter. The joy of being a part of a membership org like LOC is they do a lot of our lobbying on our behalf. The con of being a part of a member like LOC is you've got a lot of members who might disagree with us, but I think in general, LOC is taking positions that we would probably agree with this session and onward to the 16th.
Okay.
One thing, Will, correct me if I'm wrong, but the proposal that had been floated earlier about taking the city's role out of some land use decisions, without our, ability to intervene has been withdrawn. Is that correct?
Yeah, I might characterize it slightly differently. I also might say that I think that, so there's a hearing on this bill tomorrow. I think that there's a slew of provisions, I think 27 sections. There were 4 that LOC found really onerous, and I think that they're being amended out. I think as it evolves, it moves forward. I would say the reason I ... is I don't know which provisions you're talking about or which provisions might do that. But yeah, in general, if something is controversial in an omnibus, it's being removed, and those sections are, I think, being removed.
Yeah, I participated, as did Joseph and Vera last week, in LOC's. They do a weekly call when they're in session on the housing bills. And so I participated in that last week. I thought it was pretty enlightening. I will be curious to see. We were told a -2 version was coming out. Is that already out?
I haven't checked it since 5 p.m.
I
was checking at 5 p.m.
I think, we just need to follow it and keep track. There's a bill, I'll just mention this because I probably am going to submit my own comment on it. I'm not really proposing a letter like all of council, but there's a funky bill about making it easier for non-contiguous annexations for people who want to annex to a city to be able to sort of do it whether the city wants it or not. There's certain conditions about being supplied urban services and stuff like that. It really doesn't apply to us, but from what I heard in this meeting, it's prompted out of some stuff going on in Eugene. But I feel like it's an opportunity to say to the legislature, hey, if you want to talk about annexation, here's why you should be making annexations of urban and incorporated areas a thing, be making them happen and not just making them optional. So I probably am going to give them a little bit of my thoughts on annexation of the urban and incorporated areas. Anyway, if nothing else on legislation, we can move on to general council reports. I've got a few, but anybody else want to start?
We had a camp meeting yesterday. The Community Action Board met yesterday, and I do want to say
we actually had quite a few applicants join. I think it was probably the most applicants we had in one day. It was, I think, 4 of them. Actually, one of them is in this room. So that's a good sign where the CAB is growing. One of the things that we discussed yesterday, we had an individual from the Oregon Food Bank come and kind of give us a breakdown of what the picture looks like in Oregon. And it was pretty enlightening, I would say. There really isn't a contingency put in place for cuts right now. They're still trying to work to, because they don't really know the extent of what that is, plus all the new SNAP requirements. They're not quite sure how that's going to impact. Hopefully there's a mechanism that they can backfill some of that money. But some of the stuff they brought in, like Hunger Today, for example, 1 in 8 Oregonians and 1 in 6 children go hungry every day. That's insane. Over 750,000 Oregonians rely on SNAP. I mean, what's our population? It's a pretty significant number of Oregonians. And obviously, food insecurity disproportionately affects Black, Indigenous, and communities of color, immigrants and refugees, single moms and caregivers, and trans and gender expansive communities who are 2 to 3 times more likely to face hunger and poverty in our region. The Oregon Food Bank Network is actually the nation's first statewide food bank, founded in 1983. 21 regional food banks and 1,400 plus food assistance programs across Oregon and Southwest Washington. This was pretty crazy. Since 2023, visits to our network sites have increased 51% to 2.1 million households annually. They did mention that they counted it twice. I think for like people who come back is what they were referring to when they said that. But total individuals served in the most recent quarter, quarter 4, 2025, is 172,716. That's up 56.6% from the previous year. This is in keeping with statewide increases in Oregonians seeking food assistance. In response to the recent SNAP crisis, they recently were able to distribute direct purchasing funds from Metro Regional Government totaling more than $50,000. And there's quite a bit. I mean, they had a list of some of their partner spotlights within the county, which I thought was good, and some resources that I'm getting the phone numbers and some of the names of a lot of the places that still have the food pantries available, because obviously some places were cut off because of the cuts. And also we're working on getting a list of places that do delivery, because apparently there are some food banks, not a lot of them, but some pantries, that do provide home delivery.
I noticed just this week that Father's Heart, which is the partner of Loved One,
yep.
They do deliveries on Friday, and they were looking for volunteer delivery drivers. Nice. Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning that. So, just to highlight that, poverty isn't just about, money and rent. It's, food insecurity is huge. And I do have to say that we actually had a high school student from Rex Putnam as an applicant to the CAP, who was there at the meeting yesterday, and had some great ideas on how to, because we're in the middle of our needs assessment right now. We're gathering data for that. And they were talking about putting some of the QR codes in the high school for kids to participate, students to participate. So I don't know when the last time CAB had a high school student join, but I think that speaks volumes to where we at right now as a society, and as a nation, as a community as a whole. So kudos to them, but that tells you that there's a lot more children out there starving than we probably think or want to realize.
Thank you. Councilor Hesse?
Oh, sure. I sent around the Watershed Council annual report. It's pretty high level, but you know a lot about what's going on. But I thought it was a pretty good recap. It's only around 6 pages long, so I hope you get a chance to look at it. During the last board of directors meeting, it was reported that the opportunity for the Aquatic Organisms Passage Act, may have some life. And evidently it was voted out of the Senate, positively voted down by the House. So it's gone to first committee. So at least there's some movement there, which is encouraging. And that was going to be one of those big tranches of money, from the federal government. Neil was going to go to a meeting on the Monsanto chemical settlement. That was last week. I haven't got a readout of what happened during that meeting. So the summer construction on Elk Rock is the construction on the Elk Rock project is going to be going on this summer, and I think Neil got sort of tapped to, I think, lead a working group on the 6-PDQ chemical contamination, which is the things that comes off of the tires and everything like that. And so evidently, Senator Merkley and Wyden said, "We heard you talk about this, so we want you to be in charge of the working group." So I had a boss one time that said, "Never pass up a chance to write the meeting minutes." So maybe that's an opportunity, or maybe it's a pain in the butt. I don't know.
Is that some kind of statewide?
That's a federal thing.
Oh, wow.
It's Wyden and Merkley.
Wow.
And so, and we passed the mid-year budget revision, which was, kind of minor. I do want to mention that PARB held a strategic planning session on Saturday, and I got to tell you, it really went well. I attribute that to a lot of prep work and going in for that session, which was conducted by Adam, and, the chair and vice chair, Laura and Sasha. And all three of those have had some experience facilitating meetings, and it really showed, because some of those kind of meetings, if you just kind of go in there with white sheets of paper and not much else, then you're not going to get much out of it. And so it was very well organized and like that. And they decided that they basically were going to put away all the old goals because they had way too many. And they said, we want to really focus on this. And to their good credit, they really used the council goals as sort of their guiding lights to start their discussions and that kind of thing. But it was very well organized process of just brainstorming and then necking things down and flushing things out. And so I was very pleased with it. Adam and I tried to be, observers rather than participants and that kind of thing. So they came up with 3 goals, and that I'll just kind of quickly read through those. Obviously, Milwaukie Bay Park advocacy was a kind of a no-brainer. Interestingly, they wanted to advocate for more inclusive recreation. And when we said, well, we really only have a recreation department, they said, well, Parks and Recreation District does, and so we want to advocate for that whether we're in or out, because we're in a district. And so that was kind of one of their big priorities. They also, said, there's a lot of funding opportunities out there we're not sure that we're tapping. And so we want to get involved in just identifying, grant opportunities and that kind of thing, which is great, because, I've kind of always felt like, are we really touching all those grant opportunities? And it's kind of a two-edged sword there. Even if you could find them all, can you really handle applying for them all? And so, but I thought that it was good that they realized that there's a limit on the funds that the city controls and that kind of thing for the things that they would like to see. They are interested in the satisfaction surveys. The last satisfaction survey on parks was in 2023, which showed 77% satisfaction. So maybe you could just declare victory or say the bar is pretty low, because the questions are like, are you satisfied with what we're doing right now? And it doesn't have an aspirational aspect to it. And so they kind of wanted to have it more future focused and work with the city on developing the next satisfaction survey.
Was that the city's survey? That wasn't the system plan.
I'm pretty sure it was the city's.
Last 2 years ago?
Yeah, it was the
Okay.
city's. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They also were very interested in the idea. They asked me to provide, this is an example of a potential goal, and that is to, try to tap in, especially in the park desert area of the city. Can we come up with some partnership agreements with schools or churches or something like that to have sort of off-hour use of those facilities? And I did a little bit of research on that, and basically I decided that I don't know enough. But I do know that it's been done in a lot of cities, including Portland. They have these dual use agreements and that kind of thing. So we just need to get smarter about that, but they're very interested in that as well. And they also felt like there were just a lot of organizations that kind of touch on the promotion of parks and green spaces that they just don't have a lot of contact with, including the Parks Foundation and the Rotary clubs and that kind of thing. And so they want to kind of develop some sort of outreach and education and that kind of thing with those groups. And they still have work to do, to kind of flush these sort of broad goals out and come up, and they were very smart about identifying things being, tasks and values and that kind of thing, so that you could really sort of focus in on the concrete actions that need to be taken. But I was very pleased with the way that the session turned out. Really, really, really well done.
Yeah.
Good. But it takes some prep work before you get there.
Yeah, for sure. Right, nothing from you? Okay. I have a few. One like kind of good news thing or one celebration. Last Friday had kind of bookended events this week. Last Friday was the opening of or the reopening of the youth era team drop-in site at 21st and Washington. It was a lovely event, lots of teens there, a few people from state agencies and, sponsors and just random adults from the community, but really a lot more teens than adults. And they've done a beautiful job in renovating that facility. Yeah. And it looks like they have a really good team of youth, young adult, peer support people with different skill sets. And so that was really an encouraging thing. And then at 3:00 today, I went to the ribbon cutting for the Spring Creek Early Learning Center, the new Head Start program on Monroe at 224. They've actually been in operation for about a month. They started kids there January 5th or 6th, but they had their kind of official little ribbon cutting today. And it's also a lovely facility. You would know, those who've been around and remember that old building, you hardly believe that's the same building, but so they've done a beautiful job. Yeah, they've done a beautiful job aesthetically. They've gotten a grant from PGE to do solar, which will go up. That part hasn't happened yet, but they're getting both solar on the roof as well as battery storage inside. So they'll be able to act as sort of a resilience hub during power outages and things. They have a kitchen, so they can help community members during power outages and stuff. So it was really great to see. I wanted to bring something up. Don't want to put Joseph on the spot to have an answer for it, but I have been concerned. The Portland and Western Railroad, which comes through Milwaukie, through downtown and through Island Station, crosses a trestle over Kellogg Lake, crosses two small trestles in the Island Station neighborhood, and then a big trestle across the Willamette, has had two trestles give way in the last year. They got fined for one, and the second one just happened a few weeks ago. I'm a little concerned about what's going on here, and I would like us to engage with State Railroad Authority or whatever to sort of get some inspections of our trestles. I don't know if we have the authority to ask for that, but I think we should try to ask for that. I just,
We can certainly ask Mayor. I also would just say in part of the Kellogg project, it's gonna have to happen.
Well, for that big one,
Yeah, just for that big one. Obviously the other ones, but we can certainly make an ask. Whether it happens or not is another thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I just think we cannot ignore two collapses like that. And, what would happen if, I don't think either one has had a lot of chemical spill involved, but it could. They're often pulling tanks of chemicals across those bridges. So, we do not want that to happen. Okay. And then I wanted to talk just briefly about what I've been hearing on the county front about levies. And I sent everyone some notes about the NCPRD board meeting from last week. They are, it's kind of exciting that they're actually really moving forward. They have the Trust Public Land, which is a very reputable nonprofit, engaging with them on strategy, research and strategy of how to increase the revenue of the district. But it does look like they're potentially looking to put a ballot measure on as early as November. That's being balanced with what's going on with the sheriff's office. So I don't know how many people have heard about that, but there's been a Clackamas County sheriff. They're on your tax bill now. There's a Clackamas County public safety levy that's 36 cents per thousand that I guess expires at the end of this year. They are looking to renew it and have been talking about whether to just renew at the same level or to increase it. They settled last week. They directed staff to look at 60 cents per thousand as a way to, because they said if we just renew it at the current level, we're cutting positions. So we need to renew it at a higher level, go for 60 cents per thousand. It keeps the current positions and it creates an 11-member, I can't remember what they called it, crime reduction task force. The big, those of us in cities who don't have Clackamas County Sheriff's Office as our first line, we still, we still are served by them to some degree because they operate the jail. They operate the district attorney system. There are services we get from the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, and it's appropriate that, that our residents should help fund some of that. I do think this kind of a bond is a bit of a cover for the way that city residents subsidize services to the unincorporated areas. And I do think some other mayors share that concern. So I just want to sort of highlight that early in this process. I think there will be some hard questions about asking them to parse out how much of this is really going for the jail versus other functions of the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. So I can see some tense conversations ahead, but it looks like they are moving quickly and potentially even putting that one on the May ballot. I even heard that they had an idea of putting it at the higher level on the May ballot, and then if it fails, come back in November at a lower level. I just sort of wanted to flag that for everyone. So there are a couple of funding things coming out there. Okay.
Was this discussion with the mayors, the other mayors?
So,
Well, I was absent I was on travel on vacation when the mayors met, but I heard it from one other mayor, and that sent me back to look at the packet for the county commission meeting, and I can send people the link to the packet and to their meeting if people want that. You can kind of see their discussion. But yeah.
Was there any discussion about the sheriff's department's shortfall? It was kind of a surprise. Many, including the county commissioners, what was it, a year ago? Did that ever come up?
Well, I mean, I think everybody knows that's the context of, part of why they're trying to raise this amount and not just go for if their claim in the staff report that is out there is that at the current level, they're actually going to have to cut 37 positions. And it's like, well, if you've been underfunded for 37 positions, have you not already cut 37 positions, right? So, I mean, it's clear that there's some fudging of funds going on.
Maybe they should have cut their budget by 10% to build that dang courthouse. I don't know. Just saying.
Yeah.
one way or another. It's funny because it's like they could have done a levy for the courthouse, but they didn't. Either way, they're getting their money back for that courthouse through this levy.
Mhm.
It's like they double dipped.
Yeah. 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 Anyway, I think we'll hear more on both. I mean, neither one is anything decided, but I think we'll hear more on both in the coming weeks, in a couple of months anyway. But I just kind of wanted to flag those for everybody's information. Okay. Anything else from anyone? No. Okay. If not, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None heard? We are adjourned.